What made you believe you would make money as an artist?
You're not getting your freedom. Do you really want to do this enough?
Yeah.
And this is something you need to consider before you quit your current job.
This is the Learn, Create, Thrive podcast by visualeducation.com. This episode, Turning Passion into Profit.
Welcome back, listeners. Emma's going to do the introductions today.
Hello. You are joined by here. I can't do this. What?
Ben, take over.
We've got Karl Taylor, director and photographer.
Not extraordinaire. Hold on. I deliberately wanted someone else to do the introductions because every time I'm saying everyone's a genius and you just deliver the same introduction as I do.
Got Tim, who
give it a go.
holds a paintbrush.
Tim holds a paintbrush.
And Emma, who sits on Google Ads all day.
Carl moves the light around. Okay, that'll do. That's fine. They can. If you've never heard of us before, you can look us up in the show notes or whatever. Right. So today's podcast is about setting up a creative business. Now, whether that's as a full-time Venture, yeah, well done, thank you.
That's all right, don't worry.
I lost the vocabulary there. A full-time venture or a part-time venture, it can still be very daunting setting up a creative business. Now, we have a marketing expert here. We have two people sat at this table that both have their own individual creative businesses and a successful joint creative business.
And then there's Ben.
Yeah.
And then who can make the coffee.
He's just worked the same job for 10 years.
So if we don't have some answers that are credible in this podcast around this topic, well, we might as well give up doing podcasting. Let's kick it off with Emma. The first topic, finding your niche and defining your brand. But let's step back from that.
Can we just quickly read out what Tim's written here for this? From passion to profit.
That's great.
Well, I think that's quite key, isn't it?
It is.
A lot of people get into a lot of people get into the creative businesses because it is their passion. It is their hobby.
It is passion to profit.
and that's,
well, actually, that's quite good because what I was going to say to Emma before she gets into the niche and defining your brand is let's step back a minute. And why do people want to set up a creative business? You know, it's because it is a passion of theirs, what they're doing, and they want to see if they can make a profit, sometimes full-heartedly, because the passion element takes over. So let's talk about that first before we move on to the other bit. Let's talk about why they start the business. Why they start a creative business in the first place. In the sense that someone who starts a dentist surgery or an electrician's firm or a restaurant, whatever, the reasons can sometimes be different because of Tim's, clickbait title, passion to profit. It's because of that passion. And that sometimes leads to misadventure in the sense of bad decision making.
So
Ben, right, anyway.
I don't know how to start that.
Okay, well, I'm going to... Okay.
Well, I'll jump in
let Tim jump in.
Because I've always enjoyed painting and drawing ever since I was young. And then all through my school years, that was my kind of favourite lessons, were the creative lessons, the art, the design, the kind of technology lessons. And all through my education at sort of mainstream school, my tutor said, Tim, you're okay at painting and drawing, but you're never going to make any money. You can't make money as an artist. So what are you going to really do? And I go, no, I'm going to be an artist. So I had a kind of quite a stubborn view from right when I was at school. That's what I wanted to do. Right to the point that my careers teacher used to say to me, Tim, if you're not going to take this lesson seriously and get a proper job, just get out the room now. Right. And that probably even spurred me on a little bit further to
What made you believe you would make money as an artist? You hadn't really, like 15 years old, studied the market and...
I didn't have a clue at that age that you really even needed to make money. Right. So I had that passion of wanting to do this as a career. And then I started to look into the routes and start to get advice. I started to go and have, like at school, you have like outings where you go and see different businesses and see how they operate. So
work experience.
Yeah, I went to see some, speak to some various ad agencies and that, start to get an understanding that, there is careers you can do in art.
There is a market.
And there's a market there. So I started to then look at...
But at that point, you were focused on getting a job in the industry, not working for yourself.
Well, just doing something creative as a living when I left education.
But you weren't like a businessman at that point.
No,
you were still a child, essentially.
Yeah, that's it. And the businessman came quite hard struggle probably over the years that you learn by doing and by your mistakes.
So you took your passion and you then translated that to, right, I need to go and do a degree or need to go to university and go to college, which is what your next thing that you did.
So I went to art college and I was lucky I went to Falmouth School of Arts in the UK that was really respected at the time for illustration. And that was great. The tutors there were amazing. And then they started to also talk to you about, hey, this is great. You're great at everyone in the class. You're great at drawing. You're great at painting. You've got some great things. But this is what you need to do to run it as a business. So part of the course that I was on included business studies as a sort of half day a week.
Oh, that was part of the art course.
So it was part of the art course.
That's
so they did start to talk to you about the sort of legal sides of setting up your business, running your accounts, the fact that you need to consider how much money you need to live on each week to pay your rent,
That's
your
great.
bills.
They did that.
And also the college I was at, it was a lot of kind of one-on-one time with tutors, and all the tutors were working artists and illustrators at the time. So they also had good tips about how they run their business. So it was a very commercial kind of view. It was a H&D that I did, like a higher national diploma.
But when you finished all that, what was your first job then in a waiter?
No, I then got lucky and I went and got an agent, artist partners in London. And then I started getting jobs, which again was great at the start, having an agent, because they then took care of some of the business side, the kind of pricing of the jobs and the negotiation of
But they recognised your talent to take you on, because it's not easy to get an agent.
No, that was it. So I had to go the hard slog. I had to get a portfolio together. I had to go and trawl the streets, make loads of phone calls, set up loads of meetings.
But what I'm getting at is, I mean, yours is a great example of passion to profit, and it's kind of similar to mine as well. Highly passionate, highly driven, decided I was going to do it as a business, but I was very, very careful in studying the supply and demand issues and the marketplace, and thinking, is there a niche for what? Because initially I was working for other people, other photographers, or freelancing to magazines when I was doing photojournalism. But when I decided to set up my own studio, I looked long and hard at the marketplace and thought, is there enough market in this area for me to set this up? And that's when I decided, and I did a business plan and decided it was
we
possible.
see a lot of people who are like, just because I can create this means that I can have a business doing this.
That's the problem.
That's the problem that we have. Like, you might be amazing at photographing, I don't know, skiing shots, equipment or whatever. But if you're in the desert, there's not a demand for that.
No, but I think nowadays it's almost a global economy, and how I got around that, I wanted to do book covers. Now, where we're based, there's not a great deal of publishers and a lot of work doing book covers, so I went and get myself an agent in London where there is a big load of publishers. There's also a lot of competition.
Agents are hard to come by. You've got to be at the top of your game to get
and that's not always going to be possible. If you photograph newborns, and that's what you're amazing about, what you're passionate about, you want to do as a career, but you live somewhere with a aging population that's not many young people are having children, that's not going to be viable. No matter what your passion is, either you need to change that or you need to be relocating to somewhere where there is actually the demand. You need to understand
supply and demand.
Or there might be tons of other people doing that extremely successfully in your area.
But that could be an over supply.
Exactly, that's what I mean. If those people are doing it, you might not be a market.
I've also found over the years, it's like diversifying has been key as well. Like I started out doing just illustration, then I've been in the business for a long time, like 30 plus years, and then programs like Flash and animation for the web kind of came out, so I could then work that my drawing and my illustration skills worked really well into moving image animation. And back then no one really knew about, the internet was just coming out, so that was a great way of diversifying, taking my skills from work where I just painted traditionally in canvas, so I can actually use my drawing skills and my animation, my sort of creativity to start doing animations in Flash for businesses and corporates. So
and that led you into knowledge of computer programming, etc. And then started doing video as well. I had a client that said, Tim, if you can make things move. I find it interesting that your course actually taught you some business skills. Did yours do that, Ben? When you studied media and videography?
Yeah, I did media production.
Did they give you any inclination about the business world?
Well, there was like an option, so you could either do like, it was called enterprise, where they would teach you about the business of it, or you could do like live, which is what I chose to do. And then obviously we do live shows now, so it kind of benefited like for me in the long term. But yeah, quite a few people did enterprise. And
but if you look back at your university degree and you take, I don't know how many people were on your course, give me a number. 20. How many of those 20 are actually in the industry now working? I think
there's actually more than you would think. Like, obviously, that was based in the UK, not where we are. So there's more. A lot of them, there's obviously a lot of channels for media production. Like some of them went into social media, like management. Some of them went into PR. Some of them went into some of them do work for TV and ad agencies and stuff. So I guess it's.
Are they all? Do you know? Are you in touch with any?
I don't think all of them would be, but. No, I'm not in touch with all of them, but I think more than you would actually. You'd be
more than
surprised.
50%.
Yeah. I would say, yeah.
Right.
But it's interesting that, like, Tim, you obviously diversified, which helped you in the business world. But we've seen some people who have actually niched down, and that's what's made them so special, because they've become a specialist in that subject. Like David Stanbury, the wedding photographer, who we had over. He was on one of our live shows, and I think he said something along the lines of, in his area, there was loads of like mid-level wedding photographers who he was competing with, just absolutely tons of them. And instead of trying to compete with them, he leveled up. He knew he had the skill to do this really amazing, bespoke, I don't know how you describe his work, but it's very high-end wedding.
Yeah.
He priced himself up there.
Well above the rest.
Just showed how incredible he was. And that actually did him wonders for his business, because he could do that.
People were willing to pay for the quality.
Yeah.
And therefore the competition he had around him didn't matter so much, because he could do one wedding or two weddings less than them, and he'd still be making more money, because his one wedding was worth three of theirs,
and that's
or something.
If you're setting up, you need to think as a business person and think, right, how much money do I need? How many gigs do I need to do a year to get that? And is that actually possible? Is there the need for it?
And also, you've got to be really kind of subjective. Is my work good enough? Like, can I cut it at that level?
A lot of people, though, they do the opposite, don't they? And they do work for free. And it's like, that can either be really good for like getting a portfolio together, but also surely that could be detrimental in terms of you're always just that free guy,
Yeah,
it can be, and I've come unstuck with that in the past as well.
That's
when I've been starting out with sort of agencies that I've set up in the past, where people have kind of helped. They said, "Oh, could you just do a freebie for this? This will get you loads of work in." And but then everyone expects you to do it
nonsense,
for a fiver.
Yeah, I mean, I've never ever gone down that route, because I always felt that doing work for free was a waste of time. Although I've done it the other way round, where. So certainly I've never done work for free when they've approached me asking for it, but I've done what I call speculative work, where I take a client's product, they're unaware that I've got their product or I've bought their product, and I've photographed it and tried to photograph it in a way that looked better than the images they're using at the moment, and then send those images to them with the option for them to use them if they wanted, but on the basis it was an introduction, a foot in the door, trying to get their interest and making them recognize that this work is better than the work they're using at the moment. And that has led to commissions.
And that's where you could do really clever things with a niche. If you become the go-to person for whiskey distilleries in Scotland to do their photography, because you've done a speculative job about all these different brands, they've then reached out to you, you've reached out to them. That's where you can be really clever and sort of
it's different from doing like free work, really, isn't it? Kind of like, because otherwise you still own the rights to the image. Like, whereas if you'd actually shot it for them, like for free. And then also, I imagine when there is a big job come up, they probably wouldn't use you. They probably use the expensive guy because they think they're going to get better work than just the free guy.
Yeah, exactly. You would build a bad reputation for yourself. And that's where your example with David Sambry is you can put yourself in the wrong price bracket.
100%.
I mean, you have to be really, really confident that your work is good.
Of course, yeah.
You not even you need to be confident.
No.
You need to be confident that other people are confident your work is good.
He couldn't have done that from day one.
No,
he
of
had
course
to have
not.
that reputation.
Yeah, you had to have that reputation and experience.
But that's where you do. He built his brand. He built his reputation. He was doing amazing jobs. He was putting great work out online. And that all allowed him to make that decision.
Yeah.
But if he hadn't have been doing that and hadn't been building his brand very well, hadn't done it,
Yeah.
even if his work was amazing, without that, he couldn't have ever done that anyway.
But it's about having, it's your, with a lot with the time with creatives, whether you're setting up a company, a business with employees and staff, or it's a kind of one-man band, self-employed gig, it's about your kind of own identity, isn't it? And your personal
100%.
brand in a way. So it's making something and standing out from the crowd and having something that people want to buy into.
Yeah.
And being desirable from that.
He probably took his work and compared it to all those other photographers and then saw that his was better, I think there's definitely it's a good thing to do if you're gonna work out where to price yourself, is to compare yourself to the work for that, see where you sit with that.
It's the same. I mean, as when we come to sort of being known for something, I'm sure it's the same with illustrators and artists. There are certain illustrators and artists that have got a definitive look, a definitive style.
Yeah.
That's what they get booked for. That's what they get known for.
And there's some quite well-known kind of household names and that might just be in designing prints or stuff like that you'll recognise. You might not know the name, but you'll recognise the style of work in the kind of in the high street, in design and fashion or products.
I mean, I find it quite interesting actually that you do get these sort of niche level photographers. David Lund very much focuses on drinks and liquids, but he obviously shoots products as well. Barry Macario focuses very much on drinks and liquids, but shoots products. Same with Jonathan Knowles. I shoot more products, but I enjoy doing liquids as well, but I enjoy shooting people. Tom Oldham shoots specifically people, but mostly celebrities, sports people and music industry. But he's got into that niche of sports people and music industry because that's his client list that he's built now, but they're still just people. So he could shoot any people. It could be businessmen.
Yeah.
I mean, he has shot some businessmen, but it could be any person type shot. But I guess what he's become known for is that he can handle celebrity. Yeah. He can go and photograph Noel Gallagher one day, Joseph Mourinho another. Is that his name?
Jose
Mourinho another day. He can be photographing these big superstar sports people, Usain Bolt, top musicians, and I suppose when you're booking your photographer, for that, you need to know that they can handle the pressure. That's really the key thing. It's not that they're musicians or they're sports people, although I would imagine that there are certain tricks that you need to know. For musicians, it's just this sort of style, and for sports people, it's this sort of style.
There must be some element.
It's all people that are short on time, isn't it? They've got busy lives, probably busy diaries and lots of
it's
kind
in
of
and out, isn't it?
activities. So you need to make sure, they come in, you've got the shot ready, you're prepared, and you nail it.
What I really like about Tom, apart from him being a great bloke, is that on the side he does lots of other little projects on people photography, but random people in pubs, and he makes little editorial stories that he then submits in for awards and things like that. And he does some charity type shoots as well of health workers or those sort of things.
I think Tom's one of those people that has just got such a clear brand voice. Like, it is just his voice and he is the brand. But every post he puts out on LinkedIn, every reply that he puts on LinkedIn, I've friends with him on LinkedIn, everything he puts out on socials, it sounds like him.
So
like,
that branding is really important, isn't it?
You just know it's him.
There's a couple of things. When you're setting up a business, you've got like your unique selling point in a way. So you're looking at and you might have a broad range of services and skills that you can offer, but you've got to kind of package that in a way that someone can come to you and go, I want to use your skill set. So you've got to work out what your niche is in the market, what your kind of unique USP is. whether you have that written down as a sort of strap line or not, that's not necessarily so important, but it's having that kind of core idea behind your brand and the setup of your business at day one.
Well, sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, but that's the thing, like with Tom, if you're looking for someone to photograph celebrities for a campaign, you want someone that's friendly, that's got an amazing rapport, got an amazing attitude towards things. And in the same way, like, or differently, there's Cat Race, who came on one of our workshops.
Yeah.
So she specifically does dog photography.
Pet photography.
It's mostly dog photography now. But she knows what her clients want. They want fun, friendly, they want to have a cool shoot with their dog, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I just remember when I was emailing her a while ago, she like signs everything off like kindest woofs.
Right, so it's
cutesy. But that's exactly what people what the owners want. They want that fun thing. And if Tom did that, it would be ridiculous.
Of course it would.
But she's got this very amazing brand that I want to be assisting on her shoots because they look like so much fun.
Can you just imagine Tom messaging Adele back? Woof, woof. Anyway, I digress. Right, I'm going to move this along because we've got limited time. So we've covered finding your sort of niche and defining your brand there. We're going to move on to some of the business aspects next. We got legal and financial foundations on our list next, talking about business structure, whether limited company, sole partnership or sole proprietorship. Let's deal with that first. So when I first started in business, I was a sole trader essentially for many years, working for myself only. But as my business grew and then I took on employees, specifically Alex Wallace back at the time, and then we had Fabian as well and other people, I switched to a limited company because it just, I felt, gave you a little bit more protection as the business was growing, and for, I think, tax reasons as well. Then I was on the salary, I was on the payroll myself, rather than just taking willy-nilly.
Important considerations, and it's probably something, if you're creative, you need to go and get some advice, go speak to you're going to need an accountant or someone to help you with that. You might even need to speak to someone about the legal side. There's also often in your local area kind of business, kind of startup, kind of like agencies that can help you with advice, like government kind of led agencies, isn't they? And almost like mentorships as well, which can be a great way of getting started, because that's quite a fundamental decision, and also knowing how much money you've got coming in and out of your bank.
We'll come on to that later, because that's under the business plan point. But just on the legal side of things, you don't need to set up as a limited company straight away. You can start trading as a sole trader immediately.
What's the difference?
Well, a limited company gives you some sort of protection that if you go bankrupt, or you completely go bankrupt, loads of people, loads of money, they can't come after you financially, personally. They can only come after the company. If you were a sole trader, for example, so if you owed a lot of money, you could potentially be personally responsible.
Like use your house and stuff.
Possibly, yeah.
And also, there are ways that if you're just doing it on the side to begin with, you don't even have to.
And the risk is low when you're doing it as a sole trader in the early years. But when your company starts turning over a lot of money and you're dependent on big contracts that, for example, if those two companies go bust and don't pay your bills, you're then left, so then being a limited company, it's limited liability, basically what it means. So therefore, you're not personally liable or responsible anymore for that outlay if something dreadful were to happen.
It's also a way that if you're setting up with someone else, you can have you can both have a certain percentage of ownership with the business and an entity. So it's something
shares of the company.
It's very worthwhile. Considering what the best.
But it costs more money to be a limited company. But it is worth it if you're hitting a certain sort of revenue level.
But you can change as well, can't you? You can be a sole trader to start with, and then you can switch into a limited company
you like.
Later on.
Let's go to the basics: opening a business bank account, managing cash flow, budgeting for a creative business. I'm going to hold that until we get into the. Actually, no, we don't need to hold that because that is in this section. So let's talk about managing cash flow. Opening a business bank account straightforward's enough, although more difficult than it used to be, because banks ask you a billion questions and loads
Thousands
of forms. Yeah, but managing cash flow sounds very simple and straightforward. And in some ways, it's what every person has to do month to month, in the sense that you've got your mortgage to pay, you've got your groceries to pay. This is what your wages are. You know, you've got this much coming in between you and your partner. Does it cover the groceries, childcare, mortgage, the essentials? Then does it cover obviously electricity, heating, and what's left? And have I got any redundancy for a problem? It's exactly the same in a business, except the difference with a business is you do not have a set income every month. You have fluctuating income. The great thing about being employed is you know exactly what you're getting and what you're going to get in. The disadvantage being self-employed is you can have a really good 2 or 3 month period, and then you could have a dead month with no money coming in.
And also, if you're currently employed looking to go into not being self-employed, you've got to think about also all the things that you're losing. So you're not necessarily getting your healthcare, you're not getting your pension, you're not getting all these things. And are you actually?
You're not getting your freedom.
You're not getting your freedom. So actually, you're not just doing the 9 to 5 and going home, because you've got the responsibility of that business on your shoulders. So.
And that's an interesting one.
Is it worth it to you?
Is it worth it to you? Yeah.
Do you really want to do this enough?
Yeah. Are you really interested in the business side of it? And this is really interesting. Not so much now, but in the early days of my business, I was working 70-hour weeks at least every week, because when I wasn't working or shooting for clients, I was shooting for my portfolio to grow my business, grow my brand, and then on top of that, I was marketing, mail shots, mailing lists, databases, preparing loads of hand-filled envelopes and sticking all the things on, doing that day in, day out, all sorts of stuff like that. And you're literally working non-stop, quite depressing. Not quite so much now, but interestingly, what you guys don't see behind the scenes is obviously Tim and I as directors, along with John, we're having business conversations in the evening on Skype. When we're at home, we're not even thinking of it as work, but we are actually working. So we're going home, I'm writing a few letters, I've got to do that, have my dinner, piss about with the kids or whatever, boom, boom, boom. And then a bit later I think, I need to speak to John about that. So I have a 1-hour Skype call. And I don't actually think of it as work, but it is work. It is work still.
And that's the thing, you have the freedom and a bit more flexibility than doing a 9 to 5 where you've got to be there at
Absolutely.
the place. Yeah. But you've got to, when it's going great, it's amazing, all the money's falling in, but you've also got to think about that rainy day fund. And also I find as well, when you're really, really busy and you've got loads of work in and you're making good money, you're also very busy. So you're not doing the marketing. So you get this kind of roller coaster, don't you, where you haven't been able to put yourself out there. Or the other thing that I find that used to happen a lot is people go, let's not speak to Tim because he's really busy at the moment. Like clients say to you, we know you're busy,
can be
Tim.
Detrimental.
So it's almost, and that's where you've got to kind of make this decision. Do you expand? Do you take on staff? Or do you not?
I suppose you've also got the consideration, like we did a previous podcast about creative block or finding creativity. And if this is something that you love, will you still love it when you have to do it
as a business?
Like you've got loads of hobbies, we've all got loads of hobbies, but if we had to do that every day, day in, day out to make money, would we actually enjoy it? Or do you enjoy it because it's
I think that's a very good point, and I think it comes down to the personality. I actually quite enjoy business as an activity. I find there's an interesting gamification in it.
100%.
It's sort of like playing a computer game. And it's like, obviously not gambling, but you risk and reward,
because you are taking a risk to see if it's going to pay off.
And
you
a marketing campaign is a risk.
You might invest in the marketing, you might invest in some new equipment, some new software, some new
the development kits. And money we threw into this studio was a risk.
That's it.
10 years ago when we decided to move to this place from the smaller studio. So there is always that risk.
And also what a lot of people don't realise is you spend a lot of time doing the kind of admin side, especially in the early days when you can't afford to take someone on to do the other work with you. So you're not really spending all your time painting or taking photographs.
Definitely not.
That's kind of just almost one day a week, maybe, isn't it? Like the actual
if you
paid
look at
job.
the amount of time that you do actually photographing to emailing clients, talking with clients,
meetings,
coming up with ideas, meetings, post-production, like actually
legal stuff,
and doing pictures and tenders, which can also be quite frustrating. You can spend a lot of work sometimes in a big picture, a tender.
So I think, you do have to ask yourself that question of whether it's right for you as a person, personality-wise.
With the creative industries, though, I'd imagine surely you're not just like working a job and be like, right, I'm going to quit my job and start this. It would be surely it's a kind of gradual side thing, is it?
Yeah, maybe.
And then you realise you're actually making quite a lot of money enough. And you've got quite a lot of clients that you would then consider it. It's more of a gradual thing?
That is a possible route in for some,
isn't it?
I think from talking to people in the industry and like, our members and things like that, I think some people, yes, they do that. They're working, they're doing this, blah, 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 blah. And
they've got a security blanket
comes back with security
of a job.
But there have definitely been people who are like, they don't know that much about photography and they've been like, want a career, they've got a bit of money and
risky.
They just go into it.
Risky.
And there is the option as well, if you could have that career, but you could also take on a part-time job just to help you.
To cover
so you may need to step out of your main career, but you might think, well, actually, I'll just get a very easy part-time job to have a bit of cash flow in to help me get this off the ground.
For gear and stuff as well.
The next topic, because we've got to move this along, the next topic is a business plan. And this is really, really important. I actually love the business plan element because it's just a spreadsheet. Business plan is so simple. People think of it as some mega difficult thing. But a business plan essentially is a spreadsheet where you put down every single possible cost that you could incur, from your telephone bill to your parking, to your petrol, to car servicing, to your electricity. And then you have all your costs, your rent and everything for your studio, whatever it is, business you're running, your art studio, gallery. And then you have a column for what you want to earn per month, what you're going to pay yourself, what you'd like to pay yourself. Because a lot of people think, I won't worry about that bit because we'll just see how much we make. But I think that's a big mistake. I think you should set down what you want to earn, because you're going to be working so hard. There's no point earning less than you could if you had a job. Just stupid.
Well, also, like as we just mentioned, a lot of your time's took up with admin and other tasks that are required to run the business. So you need to make sure, if you're going to be shooting for, say, 2 days a week,
whether you've got the time,
you need to make sure that the revenue you make in those 2 days also cover the other 3 days that you're doing. Like more mundane work, just running the business,
and that's
sending emails.
That's the great thing about a business plan, because once you've pumped in all those figures into the spreadsheet, including the wages you'd like to get paid and the tax you're going to pay and everything else, and you look at it and you go, is there anything I've left out? Have I forgotten my water bill or any other thing? And you make sure you get it all in there. You end up with a total of what your total cost is going to be. Then you've got to take that number and you've got to add a little bit of extra wiggle room on there for things that might come up that you didn't realise. And then you've got to divide that by 12 months. That tells you how much the revenue needs to be per month. Then divide it by weeks. Then divide, like Tim said, how many hours have you actually got that you can physically work doing the job that you've got left over after the admin, and that tells you what the hourly rate you need to be charging minimum, and that's assuming you will actually get enough bookings to fulfill that hourly rate. And if not, and you think you're only going to get half those bookings, then you have to double the hourly rate
and take on some other job to help you until you get
but what the business plan does is dictates exactly how much you should be charging or could be charging. And you might be pleasantly surprised. You might think, well, hold on a minute, I could be charging £250 or dollars an hour. I could be charging more than that, or my day rate could be this. And if I get a business day there, my total figure of revenue for the year outweighs my total expenses significantly, and that's called profit.
The thing is, it's one of those things where it might not happen how you want it to happen, but it's a good indication and a starting point that it could be successful. Yes, that's
exactly. And also the business plan allows you to see, okay, if you need that amount of work or that amount of hours, you then have to closely look at supply and demand. How many other people are supplying the type of businesses you want to attract? And how is the amount of work, how busy are they? Because you're now going to divide up the work between another person potentially, or are you even going to win work off them?
And then you look at, is my work good enough and unique enough to actually outbid them?
And is the hourly rate you set in your business plan more than their hourly rate or their day rate or whatever? And is your work better or worse? Because you could go, oh great, well if I charge $250 an hour, then I can make a profit. And then you go, oh wait a minute, Joe Blogs down the road, he's charging $150 an hour and his work is still way better than mine. Then you've got a problem.
And this is something you need to consider before you hand your notice in and quit your current job. Because if not, you can be sat there going, it's not really worked. Or you need to broaden the area that you're pitching your business
Even if your work is better and you're charging less or more, whatever, the client is probably going to keep repeat businessing with the person that's already doing it as well. So
It
you've got to
takes
factor
a lot to lever a client away from an existing supplier.
Because if they've been using the same person for 10 years.
And that goes back to personality and relationships. They built a relationship with them. They won't move for a 10% increase in quality. They won't move for a 10% reduction in price often.
Because
they will
their current suppliers already proved themselves and there's a confidence there and they know that they're going to deliver week in, week out. So, and especially I found when you're dealing with bigger corporations and marketing teams, everyone's scared of not necessarily losing their job, but not delivering for their boss. So if they've got someone that's supplying that the boss is happy with their work, for them to go and say, actually, I want to move away from using Karl and I want to go and use Tim, that's a risk on their shoulders. And if you don't deliver because you've had a bad day or kind of creative block and you've come up with a bad campaign.
In my line of work, it's been kind of interesting because I've got companies that are sort of loyal businesses, but also equally art directors. So I've had an art director I've worked with for many years, and then they move agency, but then they will want to work with me. And as an art director, that company they're now working for trusts them to say, okay, well, if you're happy working with, because they know that they've worked comfortably with that person. So building those relationships with these people is hugely important to your ongoing success.
Yeah, and the other thing I found when I started, I went and got some support through an enterprise agency, like in the local town here, that helps you, give you a bit of a business advice as well, but also gives you a good sort of networking, because also if you're producing like design and illustration and kind of creative skills, they've got lots of other startup businesses that need those skills. So and also then you're not prizing, those people probably haven't yet made a decision on what creatives they're going to be hiring. So it's a good time to get in with the new startups. And then if you can deliver with them, hopefully they're going to go on and have a successful business and you can grow with them and keep servicing them with new creatives, new content for the years.
That's where like networking, collaboration, even assisting and things can be so useful.
Let's go into that topic, Emma, because we've got building an online presence and marketing strategy in some of the subcategories and network collaboration. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, it's just, especially if you're working in a local area, be that starting out in product photography, setting up a business like that, or social photography, portraits, weddings, whatever it might be, you need to look at, we sort of touched on this in a previous podcast, but you need to look at that local area and think to yourself, A, is there a demand? B, who else is servicing that clientele that you want? So if you want to do wedding photography, that's all you want, you need to be looking at what are those brides, grooms, who else are they looking at that time? They're looking at the bridal shops, they're looking at makeup artists, venues, caterers, wedding planners. You need to be getting in with them because that's your way in. If a wedding planner trusts you, they're going to recommend you to people, and or link up with a videographer who has already got a client base and a reputation.
And those are all methods of essentially marketing yourself that are not anything to do with online or social marketing, which a lot of people forget. They forget the groundwork marketing, that on the ground marketing makes such a huge difference. people-to-people relationships.
You know, it's the same as if you were starting out in product photography today, you need to be getting in with the ad agencies who are the ones that are going to be giving you work. Not the owners of the companies who don't even realise they need product photography.
Unless they've got their own in-house agency or marketing department, which a lot of the big companies do. Some of the ways actually I got in with some larger companies was actually going to trade shows where these companies were exhibiting, and I knew that they would have, you know, potentially their creative director or whatever there, and you give out some information. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Advertising agencies in the early days for me and for Tim was a key one.
But I think we see people who set up and they're like, oh, I'll just run a local Facebook ad. Are you really hitting the people that are making the decisions?
Not
necessarily.
Business, no.
Business to business, not really.
No. Social, yes.
And even social, you've still got to have a reputation, and people trust other people's opinions. So getting from that side, I think, is always a more successful route.
If you're going from business to person, also, surely you would need to be setting up your social media channels before you were going to quit your current job, because if you just quit your job and then thought you were going to be doing that full time, and you've got one follower on Instagram, and that was what you're not going to be. It's not going to be.
So you could almost. You would almost be better to sort of make the decision 6 months to a year in advance.
Grow your channels.
Grow that stuff.
Post your work.
And that's a good way of seeing if there is a demand. If you're posting amazing family shoots, over time people are liking it. Oh, I wish I could have that. You're only doing a couple of shoots a week on the weekends, blah, blah, blah. You'll soon find out if there's enough people, or if those people that you're photographing are recommending you, or you're then shooting them again when there's another milestone event. And it might take some time, but at least then you'll know what the demand is and whether people like it.
The other one that I always found good, and we mentioned this in another podcast, but was the putting yourself forward as a speaker, because there might be some organisation that do breakfast clubs or meetings or business seminars and things like that. And if you put yourself forwards as a speaker saying, I'm happy to do a 20-minute talk about the power of illustration, or the power of graphic design in business, or the power of imagery and photography, or, you know, give them a topic that sounds interesting, and they'll gladly lap you up as a guest speaker because they need content.
And that's probably a bit more different from what the usual speakers they would be having. It's a bit more kind of exciting and better to,
Chamber
visual
of Commerce talks, things like that.
I think also in stuff with things like that where you're doing talks, you can actually create demand.
Yes.
Because people don't realise they need these services.
No, sometimes they go like, we could do with a rebrand.
You might not realise that how much a rebrand would.
If you can prove to them in your talk that a rebrand could be a real powerful tool, they might go,
and
we should
they're
do
the
that.
right person, because they're the one that gave me that
and
idea.
You've got a captive audience when you're doing a talk like that, and even seminars and trade shows and things like that, other places. But you have to be very careful with who you're doing this to. I don't think he'll mind me mention this, but I've said this to David Lund many times, because he's obviously a commercial photographer and director, but he puts himself forwards occasionally to do talks at photography shows. And I said, well, it's the wrong audience, David. You're not in the business of selling how to do photography. You're in the business of doing photography for companies, and the entire audience going to that show are only interested in taking photography themselves. Go and do a talk at a big seminar on business or something.
It's like if say I wanted to become a portrait photographer today, and I want to advertise my work, I'm not going to go on Facebook and advertise to people interested in portrait photography.
No, exactly.
I'm going to advertise to
you need to connect with the decision maker. Really,
you've got to know who they are.
Remember when I first started out, when I was very young in business and setting up myself as a creative, and the enterprise agency sent me on a copywriting. There was a copywriting course they'd organised, and I went along to it. And there's one thing that kind of stuck in my mind. They said sometimes when you're writing a press release to go out there, you're often writing that to one individual in one company that you're trying to nail as a client. So whereas if you wrote a letter to them, they might just go, I've had 100 letters this month, I'm not going to even bother looking at it. Or nowadays, like an email or a link to a video or a portfolio. But if you get something in the press or something, or in a local magazine that's got some precedence there and kind of a bit of a wow factor, and they go, actually, that looks awesome, that looks really cool, we need that for our business. Do you know what I mean? And you can, so it's working out ways of getting yourself in front of the decision makers.
Many industry areas also have very specific trade magazines for that industry as well, whether it might be super yacht manufacturers or things like that, and you can find these little niche
and you
places.
Want to do your research, because like you said earlier, like trade shows are a great way, and even if, like you mentioned, Kat, like a dog photographer, then going to a dog show would be an amazing place to go to connect with potential customers. But you want to first research who's going to be there. If there's any key individuals you want to try and meet, they're probably going to be really busy and booked up. So if you're just walking off the street and go, hey, can I have a chat with you about what I do? But if you email them a couple of weeks ahead and say, hey, I'm going to be at the trade show you're at, could we have a meeting? Could we hook up for a coffee?
And it's also sharing the right thing with them as well. Like, you know, Karl, your photography portfolio, you've got such a variety. But if you were reaching out to a load of beer companies, you're not going to show them your motorbikes and your fashion work.
No, it wouldn't make sense.
You're going to be sending them or showing them or talking about the intricacies of liquid photography. If you go to businesses about business portraits, you're going to be explaining to them why they need amazing
showing them business portraits. And a lot of photographers make the mistake. They show what they think this is good work, so I'm going to show it to them. But people have got no interest in it if it's outside of their genre.
I think we've got something here about like building your online presence and your marketing strategy throughout that. And it is about knowing who you are, what you want to do and what your clients want. And people just forget about that. They're like, I've got all this amazing work. I'm going to do this fashion shoot, this shot of my girlfriend that's amazing. I'm going to put it all out there. But if the client doesn't give a damn, there's no point.
The other thing, just because Tim and I have both experienced this, having been in business for 30 years, is planning for a rainy day. Because there have been periods where we've seen 2-3 economic crashes in our business lifetime, and also, things can go south very quickly.
Also, like even with our business we're running now, like we started out providing training on DVDs. And then one day, Apple brings out laptops without DVD players in them.
It made a big chunk of difference,
So all of a sudden...
Or DVD players went out of fashion generally because online streaming platforms came on.
So you've got to reinvent yourself as well.
And open to adapting.
And being able to adapt quickly. That's one key thing. And, you know, when the stuff hits the fan, is being willing
you've got to have a kind of entrepreneurial kind of spirit, haven't you, and be able to think a bit outside the box. So I think if you're looking to start up your own business, you've got to really look as, am I the right sort of person? Can I do this? Do I want to put myself under that sort of pressure?
And also handling client disagreements and problems is an interesting one. Do you remember in the early days, bad payers? I don't get that at all now because I've got a select set of customers. But in the early days, some ad agencies would be really slow on paying. You know, you've got a 30-day term. You might not see the money for 90 days. That affects your cash flow, wasting time chasing them down. Some direct clients were the same. I've had some clients in the past really try it on where they've agreed a price for a job. You work on the job, you do the project, and they go to you, you know what? I'm not really quite happy with that. I'm going to pay you half the money and we'll call it a day. And you've got to stand your ground and go, you know what? Don't pay me anything, I'll keep it all.
And I found as well, you know, having a real clear pricing structure and a proposal from day one. So there's no kind of fuzziness, is there, with the, like, they know what you're expecting to get paid for this job, and they know you've kind of outlined exactly what you're going to be delivering for the job. The kind of timescale the project's going to take, and when you want to get paid. Do you want to get some money up front? Do you want to say part payments if it's a long project?
In the last 10 years, I've never had a problem, but any potential new clients that come through the door is 50% up front now.
And you've got to think about the time that takes. Like, you've got to also create and give yourself freedom and time to do your creative things. If that's going to take you loads and loads of time, are you actually going to have time to do the jobs, That's what you would. It's that balance of still enjoying it.
The other thing that I've learned on the getting paid side, it's much better to be really descriptive in your invoice and actually document exactly what you've delivered.
Yes,
so
detail
if there's a large sum of money you're wanting back from them because it's been a big project, don't just put down websites, X amount. List out all the work you've done. So when they get the invoice, they go, well, that's a lot. I was expecting to pay that.
Was a lot,
but they go, look at all that stuff that they've just delivered. That's amazing. Actually, that's really good. Or
even itemize it and add a price.
Exactly, yeah. So that's what I always do.
Posts,
I wouldn't put just a big figure alongside a short headline. I'd itemize it. I'd give a breakdown.
Expenses, materials.
And then if there is a problem and they're going to argue the payment, you've got something to go in and have a discussion with them to say, look, actually, I've done all of this. If you're not happy, I'll just take the job away. But I'm not going back on what I've done because I've delivered X, Y, and Z, and I've gone above and beyond what you've asked.
One other thing that just to sort of finish off here, that is really useful if you are a listener and you're thinking of starting your own business. One thing I can tell you is that none of your competitors will give you any business advice if you're set up, because you're going to be a competitor to them. So there's no point if you're opening a new videography service or graphic design service of going to your competitor graphic designer and saying, hey, could we have a chit chat about your clients and how you pay and what the hourly rate is? Because they're just going to go, no, go away. You're going to be a competition threat to me. However, don't let that dissuade you, because any other business will usually be happy to talk to you in the sense of a different type of business. Yeah. All businesses run on the same set of rules and the same process, the same, not obviously different like marketing campaigns and things, but essentially the business model is very similar. Cash flow, paying staff, paying wages, winning business, understanding income and all the rest of it. So if you have a friend who runs a shoe shop or another business or boom, 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 and they've done it for quite a few years, that is really good advice. Even though it's nothing to do with the business you want to run, the business advice you can get from other business people in it, and those people have no problem chatting to you because you're not a threat. You're not a threat.
And often you'll find actually they're really proud of their business, especially if they've built it from the ground up. So they're very happy to share with you tips and tricks that they've done, maybe even recommending contacts like accountants and kind of business advisors and people that they benefit from.
Advisors,
software programs that they use for their accounts, which are good, which aren't. So getting that benefit and recommendations
and you could do that with
locally.
More than one business that you've got, them personally or have a relationship. Or if you don't and you're a graphic design company, saying I'll offer them a free new logo or something for a couple of hours of their time.
So that is another way. It's not doing work for free, but you could barter. You might have an accountancy firm that needs a rebrand, so you could maybe give them, and they might be a startup business, so they've got a cash flow as well that they're watching, so you could share some of your time and hours for some of their time and hours in return, and that's
Right, we're pretty much out of time here because Emma's got to go somewhere, but one little thing also, one mistake I made in business for too many years, I was earning very good money working as a sole trader on my own, and I took too long to employ someone else because I was worried about, having worked on my own for so long, what it was going to be like working with someone else, whether there was going to be any issues with that. And also the responsibility of having to pay someone's salary. It was a big thing for me, but the books and the spreadsheets and all the money was there. I was like, well, I can afford it. It's not an issue. Why don't we do it? I was getting too busy to handle the work myself, but I kept putting it off. But what I did discover, that as soon as I did it and I took on an assistant who was doing partly the books and partly this and partly some of the admin and the marketing, oh my God, what a relief. Opened up my freedom and my time to get on with work and expanded the company more rapidly.
I know a few creatives that they employ people like that, but even just on a part-time basis, just for a few hours a week, just to
freelance
offload.
Ones, rather than even
and these
full-time staff.
Freelance kind of PAs or admin people, secretarial services.
That will cost you more per hour, but you don't need to employ them for the whole week.
No, so you might only need to employ them for a morning just to sort through all your, do a chunk of your admin in your work, and that frees you up for a morning to actually do creative work that can bring in money for the business.
And the other thing I found, I mean, I don't know how it would be in other areas like illustration and stuff like that, but certainly in photography, having a photographer's assistant or another second shooter, the time saved in setting up a job. And if you were able to do a job much more quickly and the client wasn't there, you could still build the same, but then you could be doing a different job or another job. You could just handle work and projects bigger than you were able to handle previously as well. So when you feel it is the right time for expansion, don't be scared of it. If your books show you've got the money to do it, from my experience anyway, doing it will actually result in you making more money further down the line. Okay. I think that's reasonably well covered.
Best of luck if you're wanting to start up
best of luck if you are planning on setting up a business. But do remember, guys that are listening, girls that are listening, the passion to profit thing is an interesting thing, because passion is one thing, profit is another, and you have to be very careful with that decision of how one will affect the other, and whether you're going to be comfortable with, will it take the passion away? Will it destroy what you loved? Or do you have also a passion for business that you can make it work? Right, guys, thanks very much. We'll see you next time.
This was the Learn, Create, Thrive podcast, hosted by visualeducation.com.